All right, so thank you, everyone. Today, we're going to go through introduction to software testing, actually. So, and there are a lot of things I'm going to be talking about today. So, if you are new to software testing, so don't worry. So, I will try to cover a lot of things this um, evening, but I will focus on manual testing for this particular session. So there'll be time when you're going to kind of ask any questions, so which I'm going to leave that to the very end anyway. So one thing, yeah, my name is Deji Manuel. So yeah, I'm going to go quickly. What is testing? One thing I can say is like everyone can do testing. That is what I believe in actually. So in fact, not everyone can. Everyone does testing, right? So when you wake up in the morning, the first thing that you do is testing. It's also very, very profound because when you wake up in the morning, you open your eyes. Yeah. Open your eyes. You try to, even you might do it unconsciously, actually. You open your eyes, you look around, how you can see everything. And if you cannot see clearly, right, let's say you are not wearing glasses, right, you cannot see clearly, and then, oh, what happened? You close it again, you open it again. Some of you go into the bathroom or try to wash your face, and eventually, yeah, if you can see clearly, if you cannot see clearly, or you are not able to raise your hand or leg or something like that, you call 999. Actually, something is wrong, right? And the same thing applies. Or let's say, for instance, you are wearing glasses. You wake up in the morning and you found out without your glasses, you can see clearly, right? That would be a shocking, maybe it's a miracle. Yeah, something is, yeah, technically, yeah, not as required. So basically, and that's another thing, if some of us that will buy new phones or a new application, or you add a new app to your phones, the first thing that you do will be testing. You try to test it to ensure that it meets what you want it to do, right? For instance, if you buy a new phone, you look at it, that did they send you iPhone when you wanted an Android phone. So you will first check, actually. You check the make, you check the mode, you check the version, you check, yeah, and also you check the features. That what you're actually doing is testing, actually. So on that note, I can tell you, all of us who've done testing, and it could be ad hoc as well. So some of you that do cooking as well, when you are actually cooking, you do some testing as well, and you ensure that the uh, pepper is right, the sauce is okay. It's testing. But now let's bring it home to software testing now. So what exactly is software testing? So there are different levels of testing that you could do. You could do static or dynamic testing. So for now, static is basically not testing the application or not bringing the application up, or you're only trying to test requirements as well. So, and dynamic is when you execute that particular application. So that is the difference. So, but one thing that is different from the one I said before in terms of testing and professional tester is like the previous one that I said is ad hoc testing. You just do it willingly. But now when it becomes a professional, you have to have some script, you do some planning, you do some preparation, there's evaluation, there's report. That differentiates you as a tester from a professional tester, because now it's kind of more structured, right? It fits a particular purpose. So, and yeah, your software, your process, you have documentation, you have operation that you have to test. So this is what we are talking about anyway. So, and the next question that you may want to ask is why is testing needed? This is very, very important, actually. Testing is needed for you to be able to check that everything is okay on the application performs as it should perform, and yeah, there's no mistakes, so, and there's no flaws as well, so, and the application is fit for purpose. That is the purpose of testing. This is very, very important. We see some applications that are developed or released, and they I think, for instance, for some of you that are following what's it called, the space shuttle that, what's his name, was the owner of Twitter, actually launched on the first day, actually. Yeah. So that didn't actually launch properly, because eventually, before he reached to the where he's going to the moon, it actually kind of blown up, actually. So it could be because it was not properly tested, or it's the first time they are going to test this in the real environment. So testing is very, very important, and it's something that we do daily. And like I said, everyone can test it. The aim of testing, it's basically to ensure that, yeah, the application meets the requirement, actually. So, and so there's different processes that tester will follow to ensure that, yeah, this application actually meet what you're meant to do. And also, there's some fundamentals as well of testing that you need to know for you to be able to do that testing properly as well. So, and like, testing now in recent professionally is a process, right? It's a process rather than a single activity, right? So those process, there are series of activities that you need to do. So we're going to talk about all these activities that are involved in testing. So, and that is why you are here to know what are these activities in. So now let's talk about manual testing. So this is in manual testing is when you take the application and you go through them, you execute them with some test cases. Don't worry if you don't know what test cases are. We're going to talk about that later. So you go through them manually, right, without having to use any automation or any code or any process at all. So that's one. So, and you record your findings as you go along to ensure that the process actually meets what you are looking for. That is a manual testing. So now, if you now flip it to the other side, the automation part is when you now use a particular tool or technology to actually do what you should have done manually, right? So maybe the application should click on a button, but instead of clicking on a button manually, you use the application or that particular tool to click on a button. You might have to maybe write some code or something like that. But if you're interested in that as well, we would also consider this during this particular program as well. So, and there are different tools that you can use for automation. A few of them is what I've listed there. But in the process of this particular program, you would have experience with Selenium. You would also use Visual Studio. You will use C#, and you will use you will also use a BDD, actually, so SpecFlow as well. So, and you will also use Azure. Well, I think that is not there. So yeah, all these are different automation tools that you could use anyway. So now, before now, maybe a few years ago, I'll say 15 years ago or thereabout. So there's a particular tool that we call Selenium IDE. Selenium IDE is just for record and play. Not a lot of people use it right now. That just also cross it out, but it's still there. You can decide to use it whenever you want to do. But for the purpose of this automation, that we are going to use Selenium WebDriver, which is applicable to, or you can use it on Firefox, IE, or Chrome, whatever. And there's no record and play. You have to kind of go through the automation step anyway. So a little programming knowledge is required, but you don't need to be honest. We would kind of teach you on how to program this if you are also interested in that anyway. So I'm going to skip this one because we are not going to talk about Selenium IDE, but if you are interested in Selenium IDE, so you can just kind of go on Firefox and download it as an extension and you put it there. It's quite easy to use anyway. So we are going to focus on WebDriver actually. So that's what we're going to use anyway. But I will go through that. So for Selenium WebDriver, so this is the architecture diagram. So you have Selenium and you link it to the Gecko driver or Chrome driver. And there's also kind of Edge driver as well if you are using Edge. So after that, then they are linked to that particular browser that you are using. So, and now the next one is, okay, what are different roles or testing roles that we have? you have manual testing for manual tester. There are a lot of manual testing roles outside. Let me put that outside right now. So some of us might not want to go to automation, but there are a lot of manual testing. And in fact, I think there are more than automation as well. So if you know the manual testing that well, you can go and apply. So of course, yeah, there's automation engineer as well, but I think they pay more as well. But if you know automation, of course, you should do manual as well. So that's one thing. Yeah. So technical lead, in that role, so someone will lead the team, or as a team lead, or as a technical team as well. So there's also performance QA. So for this particular program, we are not going to do performance testing. So if you are interested in that, there's another program for that. So we're going to focus on manual testing and test automation. So the core responsibility of automation tester, so you would, even as a manual tester as well, you would identify and select your test cases. But as an automation tester, you would select your automation test cases. As a manual tester, you will select your test cases. And for manual tester, you might not need to set up environment, or they might also give it to you to set this environment, and you start to work on that. But of course, you as a manual tester also, you might also need to create and also run your test cases manually as well. For automation, you might need to run it using the automation test cases that you've created. And also, as a automation tester, you would design your test framework using that particular tool that we are going to teach you. And then after that, you start to maintain it as you go along anyway. So if you have any question, please do type it on the chat. I will look into that as we go along, if that's fine. So just ensure that you type it into the chat anyway, that's fine. So I will look into that. So, okay. So, okay. So the step for you to be able to create manual automation test cases. So the first thing, you define your scope, as then you select the right tool, right? So right now we are going to be looking at Selenium, right? So then you do your test plan. Even if you're a manual tester, you also need to kind of have a test plan, do your test design, do your test strategy. And yeah, as a tester, also as a manual tester, you might also need to set up an environment, or they set it for you. And then this is only for automation. So you automate the test script, and then you start to execute them as well. And then you generate your report. So this is just going through the manual this particular process anyway. So we're going to go through this later. So these key skills that you need to become automation developer, you might need to have, C#. We are going to talk about C#. So we're going to go through that. So you might also, if you have problem solving skills and you are really, really good in mathematics, that also is good for you as well. So organization skills and time management skills as well will be also important as well. So I can't really overemphasize this one. You need to have accuracy and attention to detail. This is very, very important as a QA. So this is very, very important. So, okay. So as an automation tester, you can earn from, let's say, 30,000 to about 70,000, depending on your experience, I would say. So even as a manual tester, you can also start from, let's say, 20 to maybe 40 or 50 along that line, as well as a manual tester as well. So depending on the experience. So So, okay, and I'm going to skip this one for now. So these are different for automation tester. You can see where it is 55 compared to other roles, as you can see in IT anyway. So as you can see, so yeah. Okay, now principle of testing. So initially when I spoke about that, everyone can do testing, but you need to know that there are different principles that you need to adhere to when you are testing. So this principle, I'll look into them first. One, the first principle, right, is the testing shows the presence of defects, right? Sometimes when you do testing, right, you can say, some people say there's no defect in this particular application. That you cannot say, right? You can only say that there are defects in the application. It cannot prove that there's no defect unless that application is so simple and you are able to say, yeah, but the probability of defect will reduce because you've tested it, right? But you cannot actually beat your chest to say, oh, this particular defect is, this particular solution or application is defect free. So you can't say that. So another thing also, for some application, you cannot do exhaustive testing. It is impossible. You cannot say, I have covered all the combinations of input and output preconditions, and you cannot say so. But of course, you are, as a tester, there are you can have a lot of permutations or combinations that you need to cover, but it's not, you cannot say, oh, every journey. For instance, if you go to a website right now, you can say, I've covered every journey and there's no other journey that you can, anyone that you have not covered. But what you need to do as a tester is to mark out the journey that you are going to do, right? And then let them know that, okay, we've covered this journey. Of course, this journey should be the major journey that people would go through. And another principle is that early testing is very, very important, right? As a tester, that you start testing as early as possible, right? As early as possible, so that when errors are found or defects are found or bugs are found in testing or early enough, it's easy to fix. Let's assume that you start testing where the application is not yet developed, right? And you find a bug in the requirement, right? What is left to be done? We just have to tell the BA to say, can you change this, right? And which is easy. They will just change it, or maybe backspace, delete, or something like that. But if you find a bug in the application, then means developers needs to fix it, right? So that will take a long time, right? But let's say it's developed during development, that also is still a bit low cost anyway. But if an application goes live and then you find a bug in that, so that could be costly. So that's why it's very, very important for you to start testing early. And also another principle is defect clustering. That's why it's very, very important to say, in some instances, defects or bugs are kind of like, they're like parasites, right? They cluster in a place. Maybe because the developer that developed that particular place did not do a good job, or sometimes maybe that area is also difficult. But in some cases, when you find a bug in a location, try to test it again, right? In that around, because it's possible that in that particular place, you might have a lot of bugs around that area. Do you get it? And so that's why these principles say sometimes defect can cluster in a particular place, actually. Then another one that you want to talk about is pesticide paradox, right? So this is one of the pitfall of some testers, actually. Don't fall into this pitfall, because some people would kind of take a test case, right, or a scenario, and they start to test it, right? So, and they take another scenario or a test case again to test it, right? So for instance, now, let me give you a quick example, right? And let's, for you, let's say I have a number, I have an application that accepts 1 to 10, right? So I just want to ask quickly 1 to 10. So how many test cases or how many test cases do I need to test it? Can we type it quickly? If you want to test an application that accepts 1 to 10, what will you do, right? So quickly, so how will you test it? Let's just type it quickly. If you have an application that accepts numbers from 1 to 10, what are you going to enter to be able to test this application? Can we quickly do that? Just type what you would tell. Okay, someone said 2. Okay, so let me know if it's only 2. Okay, is there any other thing that you put in there as well? So can we do this? Can we make it interactive, please? So can we? So someone said 2. Is 2 the only number? Okay, okay, quickly.
Sorry, DG. The question is not clear.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So I'm going to repeat the question. Right? you got application that accept 1 to 10, right? And this application, when you, in that particular field, right, you can only enter 1 to 10, right? So if you are to test this application, what number are you going to enter into that particular field? So that's the question. What number are you going to enter into that field, right? If this application accepts 1 to 10. Okay, someone said test numbers, characters. Okay, that would be like 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. So someone said 0 and 11, which I think is really, really important, actually. That's good. So quickly, I want to say now, for instance, if you type 1, 2, 3, and you type it up to 10 times, you are actually doing the same thing, right? So that's what is called pesticide paradox. If you put 1, if you put 2, if you put 3, if you put 4, they would behave the same way. You are not going to get another bug by doing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 10, right? You are not going to get that. But let's say if you put 0, right, because that's invalid, right? That is, yeah, because you are going to test it because does it accept invalid number? With 0 is invalid. That if you accept, if you also enter 11, right, that also is important as well. So because that is a different test case as well. So if you enter 10, so what I would advise you to do is like you enter 0, you enter 1, you enter 10, you enter 11. Those are the test cases that you need to enter. So for this particular application, so we're going to go ahead later, or we'll talk about test design techniques, right? These are where I'm going to teach you different techniques that you need to use when you are actually testing an application. So that's another thing that's going to come up. So, and then within your, when it comes to the practical part, so you can now use these techniques during your testing. And this is very, very important. So another thing also, testing is context dependent, right? Which means that when you are testing, right, you need to know the context that you are testing on, right? For instance, if you are going to be testing an application that, that the banks use, you need to know that it's different from when this application is used by maybe like for toys, do you get it now? Or is for game, do you get it now? Maybe, and if you're talking about an application that is used by NHS, right, it's also very, very critical, right? You talk about the impact of the failure of this particular application. Is life going to be affected if this particular application fails? Is money going to be lost by this application, right? So, and that is what we are talking about. So if the application fails, what is it? So it's very, very important to know the context of how you are doing your testing. And also, like I said, absence of error fallacy. So you cannot say there's no error on when you are actually, when you've started. Actually, you can only say, oh, you have fulfilled the user requirement, right? Yeah. So that's what you have to say. From what the requirement says, you fulfilled it, you've tested it, but that doesn't mean that that particular application might not contain an error. So yeah, so let's move on that. So now we're going to talk about different testing process, right? So when you are testing, so you have different process. You have waterfall model, you have V model, and you have Agile and Scrum in software development lifecycle. Each one of these, they have different way that you do your testing on based on those methodology. So for instance, if you are using a waterfall, right? Waterfall, as the name implies, is like a water falling into the rock, as you can see. So when people use waterfall, they gather requirements first, and then after they gather requirements, they also then do system design. So you, based on the requirement that you gather, you design it, and then you implement it, basically like you develop that system, right? So after you develop the system, you integrate the system, and then you start testing it, right? So at the O, it's being integrated together, and you start testing it. So then after that, you then deploy the system, and then you start maintenance. So that is waterfall, right? So the system will be coupled together at this particular stage, and you start testing. The disadvantage of this particular particular methodology is that if there's an issue during requirements, and you will not see it until when they've been coupled together and you are testing. So if there's an issue during testing, you have to start from requirement again, actually, because that means your requirement is wrong or something is wrong from there. Then you go down again, coming down. So that is why people are moving away from waterfall, and they are now, embracing agile. For V module, right, it's similar to waterfall, but the only thing in there is like for each of the level, right, you have a test that covers each level. For at the user requirement, you do another test at that point. At the system requirement, you do another test. As a global design, you do another test. So it becomes like a V shape, as you can see, right? During implementation, after you finish implementation, you now go to do component testing, which some people might call unit testing. So you take the design document and you do component testing, and then you move up now. So after you've done the unit test or component test, then you move up again, right? So, and you do the integration testing. The journey will move from like that, right? And then you move up like that. So as you are developing, you develop down. And as you are testing, you test up like that. So it becomes like a V. So, but when you are testing, you will be testing based on the corresponding left part, actually. So let's say you are doing integration test. So that will be depending on the global design. So if you are doing system testing, you will take the system requirement as a basis or as a document that you use to be able to test it. So, and if you are doing the acceptance testing, you will take the user requirement to be able to do the acceptance testing. So before the application goes into operation. So that is this particular module, V module. So, but now the in thing now is agile. So you do everything in iterative, right? So what you do now, you have a discovery stage where you write your requirement, you design it, you develop it, and you test, right? For each of the application or a feature on the application, you will go through that. That's what we're going to do. In sprint 1, let's say login, you do BA rights requirement for the login, and then maybe they also create the wireframe and the process map, and developer will develop it and you test it. You move to another feature with another feature, you do like that. And then when you finish everything within that particular sprint, you move into another sprint as well, which you have different documents or different discovery phase or different artifact that B has created. And then developers will develop and you test it again. You go on and on like that until the application is developed. You are not developing them like in a big bang like we have here in the other part you have here. So basically the implementation, they write all the requirements here and they develop everything, right? And then you start to test after it's been developed, right? So, but in the agile way, right, you will be developing step by step and testing it. You have quick feedback as you go along. Yeah. So that's that. So Scrum is one of the most popular framework in Agile. Yeah. So, and we are going to be using Scrum in this particular one. There are a lot of things in Scrum that you would be able to be exposed to. And for instance, what is sprint? It's a 10-box period when that particular team will complete a set number of tasks. And yeah, so when you have different ceremonies that you have to do, daily stand-up, sprint planning, retro, reviews, and yeah, of course, like, you know, there will be a demo where you do you demo your incremental release that you've got within the team. You have your backlog that you have to produce, and also you have your sprint backlog. You're going to actually get your hand on this one to say what's different between sprint backlog and product backlog as well. So that's, and one thing that I want to say is like most of the sessions that the Scrum Masters are doing, right? After they finish, make sure you take the video as well, and yeah, just kind of listening. It's going to really help you as well as a keyway. So in terms of the teams, so within your team, you're going to have developer. So everyone there, they call them development team actually. So you're going to have developer. Let's say this is the guy, yeah, and you're going to have the keyway. Maybe this is the guy here, and also the BA. maybe this is the guy. So you will call them together, development team. And as well, you have the scrum master, you have the product owner. So these are responsible to the stakeholders, all right? So to be able to kind of make sure that the application developed successfully. So you also have subject matter experts. They feed into the system, from like myself right now in most of the application. So you will call myself like a business owner or stakeholder, so which have input in the application, or a subject matter expert, like someone that has got knowledge of the application that you want to call in upon when you have questions to ask anyway about the application. Now let's move back from agile to testing now. So for because here now I spoke about some level of testing over here. So we're going to break them down now into different level of testing that you need to do. So you have unit test, you have integration test, and you have system test, and you have acceptance test. These are different level of testing. So we're going to talk about who does what. Yeah, the first level is unit test. Unit is like a component of the testing. So this is where developer will test their code. The unit test is not done by manual tester or automation tester. It is done by the developer. So that you don't go for interview and say, I do unit testing. You don't do unit testing. You do it's the developers that actually does unit testing. So where they look at their code and they actually write the look at the system test, integration of the application and the code inside, and they test it. So there are different techniques that they normally use as well. So for those of you guys that are interested, there's a book I would recommend that you can look at this. So as you go along, this software testing book. So, and the admin will send it to you as well. So in soft copy, so that you can read on this one. Anyway, so integration testing. So this is now when you couple these components together and you now bring them together and you now look at how they interact together. This one, it can be API level, it can be two systems being integrated together. So yeah, of course, testers could be involved in at this point right now. So when you bring two systems together, or you want to test out one system integrates with another system, so you might also be asked to do this one. This is a major one that people do as a tester, system testing, when you have the whole product or system as one entity, right? And then you look at the requirements that particular system should validate, right, or should work according. Then you take that requirement and you verify if that requirement meets what the applications does. Software testing is so easy, right? What you need to do is take a requirement, right, that says the application should do this, right? Take the application, right, and check if the application does what the requirement says. That is your job. That is what you need to do, right? So application should accept 1, put 1 inside. The application should accept 10, put 10 inside. The application should not accept 11, put 11 and let it not accept it. That is what you need to do as a tester. So it's so easy, and I can tell you, everyone, even children, can do testing. To be honest, if you are a child, actually, when you are growing up, when they give you a toy, the first thing you want to do, you want to break it, actually. So that is stress testing. That's another level of testing as well. So now we are talking about acceptance testing. This acceptance testing is also done by tester or a representative of the business, right? I'll say it again. So acceptance testing is done by a tester or a representative of the business or the customer. This is when you will, as a tester, you look at what the system wants, what the user wants, and you want to confirm that is this application meeting what the users want, right? It's another level of testing when it is ready. It's like some people in the layman language, you might say maybe third eye check or something like that. But before application can be accepted, you want someone to kind of go through that again to say, okay, yeah, I think we are ready. It's a go, and that's it. So, and this particular level of testing is sometimes focused on validity or validation of the test, actually, to say, oh, is this particular system now, is it fit for the purpose? That is what you want to do. That, and to be honest, that is what you've also established here as well. But this one is now giving you another added assurance, right? But normally, sorry, I don't want to go up a bit. So normally this person that does this level of testing, system testing, will not be the same person that will do acceptance testing, because then it's of no use, right? So it might be, okay, before we release to the client, can another person quickly do a user acceptance testing for it to ensure that it meets purpose. When you are in the internship, right, what you need to do is like, so if someone does system testing of that particular application, pass it again to another person to ensure, yeah. So to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to do system testing, so acceptance testing. But sometimes it might also be the BA that will also do that as well. So because they know the requirement, they just want to quickly validate. The level of testing might not as, it will not be as detailed as what you want anyway, what you've done in the system testing, but it can just be a quick check to ensure that the system is fit for the purpose anyway. So those are the level of testing. And also now in terms of the target of testing, so you can see the testing here actually. So you have non-functional testing, you have associated change, you have functional testing. Most of us will be on this level. Functional test is what the application should function as. What is it doing actually? You might talk about the functional testing, in data integration testing, security testing, GUI testing, installation, everything. And also in terms of non-functional testing, you can talk about the load, how the application is performing in terms of performance. Is it, like I told you before, sometimes you want to break an application. What you are trying to do is non-functional testing. Is this application, is it user-friendly? That also is non-functional, because it is not about the function, right? But it's good for you to get it, right? But it doesn't affect the function of the system. For instance, if the application fails when you load 1,000 users, but it's still okay when you put 50 users. But if you are not having more than 50 users, then you are fine, right? So, but sometimes you want to ensure that it meets all the purposes that it is required to meet to get it now. And also is fit for now and also fit for future as well. So, okay. Now, how do you identify test conditions? So someone asked me, what is test condition, right? This is very, very important. I remember, I won't even forget, many years ago, a friend of mine said, oh, what is test condition? Basically, yeah. So best test conditions are simply something that you could test, right? It could be a feature that you can test, or it could be a code or something. What can you test, right? So that is what is called a test condition. For you to be able to do that, you need a process for you to do that. So you need like a test analysis process, right? So that you would kind of go through and you test it. So, and for you to test an application, you need what you call test basis, right? Which is like a requirement. What are you testing on, right? So that is the test basis. What are you testing on? These are requirement or a document that you take. Like I said, that you could do testing. Anybody can do testing. In the first instance, when I said, right, that everyone does testing. When you wake up in the morning, you do testing, but because you have the requirements in your head, right? You know what you're expecting. When you buy a new phone or you download a new app, you have the requirements in your head. But now, professionally, you will not have the requirement in your head. You might have to write it down. So, or someone will have to write it down. But there are also instances when there's no requirement. You have to use your experience to be able to test that application. But one thing I'm saying is, like, once you are testing based on requirement. Whether that requirement is written down or it's not written down, you need to know that there's a requirement. Then you will now use that requirement to define what you should test, right? In most cases, you might have to do like is it true or false? And that is life, to be honest. If this application should accept 10 and it's not accepting 10, then it's false. If it should accept 1, it's not accepting 1, it is false. But if it should accept 2 and I put 2 and he accepted it, oh, that's true. So that's what you need to do throughout, to be honest. So, and now, so after that, you need to specify your process or the script. So because you are going to be testing an application And those applications might have a journey or steps, right? You might need to say, okay, oh, can you do this first one? Let's say, like prep major that most of you have done. But for you to be able to post a course on prep major, you need to register. After you register, you log in. After you log in, become an instructor. Those are the steps. So in that instance, you might need to be putting those down as the steps. So, and there's a context for that, because when you are actually executing it, you are going to be executing based on that steps. So this particular step is what we call a test procedure, right? A test procedure, or maybe we could refer as a test script. These are different steps that you need to undertake or you need to undergo for you to be able to validate a particular test condition, which is, and I said a test condition is a feature or something that you are testing. For you to be able to say, oh, login works. What are your steps? What did you go through, right? So, and you know, in the first year, I said that you cannot say there is no error in an application, but you can say, I've gone through the login step. This is my test procedure. This is my test script. This is what I did, right? Then you can now say, okay, yeah, that's fine. So based on that, I can say that this particular application, it fits for a purpose because I've been able to follow this particular process and it worked. That's what you need to do, right? So for automation script, the manual test cases that you've designed, then you just convert it into automation, right? So for this program, you are going to write your manual test case first. Then after that, we will then change it into automation. That's what we're going to do. There's a document that I also asked you to look into. So this is like a international document. It's actually developed by IEEE organization. So it's called IEEE H29 standard. So in there, you will see the template for test cases and you will see the templates for test procedure as well. I will tell you what you need to write, what you need to put in there. So just Google that document out and say, oh, I'm looking for IEEE H29 standard test procedure and also test cases template. It will give you a template. You need to also create it. This is very, very important. So as you go through this, you need to look at that template by the time that we meet, and try to look into this before tomorrow, right? So, and then you would kind of say, okay, this is what you need to do because you are going to be using this document as well, okay? Okay, I'm going to skip this for now, but this is really, really good for you to go through later. So, and like in the beginning, I said there are static tests and also there are dynamic tests. Static test is basically you executing your application without, you testing the application without executing it, right? Which means that you will not bring it up. You're only going to be testing the requirements, right? Maybe doing, some of us who will have done this when, let's say you are doing your thesis, you give it to another person to inspect it for you or to do a review or a walkthrough. Yeah, that is basically static test. But when you talk about dynamic testing, is you bringing the application in and now start to test it or executing it. There are different levels of this testing. So you could do structure-based testing, right? Structure-based testing is basically like, this is related to unit tests or developer because you need to have exposure to the structure of the application. So structure of the application, some people call it white box actually, because this is based on the structure. You need to know what the code is saying. So, and then you will now look at, oh, how many statements in the code have I covered? How many decisions in the code have I covered? How many conditions in the code have I covered, right? So for this one, it's normally done by developers, okay? And now also, right, so you also have specification based. When we say specification, we are talking about requirements or documentation, whatever you want to call it. So now we have a documentation. How do we test the application? We can use case testing. What are the use cases that we want to test, right? We can do that. And also in that document, do you have any transition? Is the application moving from one state to the other? So we cannot also do that and say, okay, let me move from one state. As the application is moving from one state, you design your test cases like that. And also, is there any decision, yes or no, true or false? And along the line, you can do that. So we are also going to talk about boundary value analysis. The question I gave to you is about the boundary. I've got an application that accepts 1 to 10. So if you are going to be testing it, you test it around the boundary. Okay, this application will accept 0, is at the boundary, and also does not accept 0 rather. So it will accept 1, and also it will accept 10, but it should not accept 11. So that is boundary value analysis. And also equivalent partitioning, we're going to talk about as well. Everything, mostly everything could be divided into equivalent partition. So true or false, life or death, boy or girl, whatever that is anyway. So yeah. So now let's quickly talk about test design techniques, okay? Test design techniques, the first thing, right? So specification based, I've spoken about this quickly. I said specification, right? This is now black box testing. So white box is what we have here, basically, which is structure based. Structure means that you know the structure, you know what it goes under the hood, actually. But with specification, you don't care what is in the structure. So it's just a black box, basically. So for this one, you would need a document, actually. So, and you use that document to assert or validate your testing, right? So that is what we are going to do most of this in this program, right? So when the BA will write a requirement for you, and then you bring the application, you just validate that what the BA has written, that's what the application is doing. That's what you will be doing. So now for you to be able to do so, there are different techniques that you need to do actually. So okay, I've spoken about the structure base anyway, so I'm not going to waste time on that one, but you know, so what this is, yeah. So there's also experience based. So you know, there's structure based, there's no requirements. You use the structure, but you know the structure of the application. There's also one where you have requirements, that is specification. But in some cases, you might not have requirements, right? You might want to use your experience to be able to test the application, right? So most of us now, we might also be a Google, let's say a Facebook tester, because we know how Facebook works. And sometimes most of us, this does not look right, because technically what we are doing is testing. So you want to post something on Facebook, it's not going, no, this does not look right. But you did not even know the requirement of Facebook. You have not read the requirement, but you know how it should work, basically. So at that point, you are using your knowledge, your skill, and also your background as a prime contributor towards your test, right? So in professional testing as well, you would also do that, right? Because sometimes maybe the BA has left, or when they started, they did not write requirement and they give it to you. Sometimes you might need to use experience even to be able to test the application. So now, okay, cool. This is very, very important. I think I've already started talking about this. So how do you apply different categories, right? We talk about specification. So in terms of specification, you do this when you have specification. When specification is available, document is available, you use the specification-based techniques. So when you have knowledge or a good tool coverage for the code coverage, you will use unit structure based. When you have exposure to the code, right, you use structure based. But and also experience based also is used when you don't have specification, right? There's no specification, or the specification is inadequate or out of date. You know, I mentioned now, sometimes the BA must have left and there's no BA to update it again, or developer are just doing their own thing. So for you to test that, yeah, it might be specifications, or someone asks you to come and test like a Twitter or something like that. To be honest, most of us know how it should work. So you just use experience to be able to test it. Yeah. So now let's go to test techniques now. So I have actually spoken about this. So let me leave this one right now and say, okay, we have two levels, right? Static and dynamics as well. So now quickly for this time, I'm going to talk about this equivalent partitioning. So like I said, every thing, mostly, let me say mostly things in life could be divided into two, black or white, right? So yeah, so when you are doing your testing, you look at, can I divide my testing into partition? Right. So someone is saying that, okay, oh, where is a valid case and invalid case? That is you dividing it. Okay. When you are testing, ensure that you get the valid one, you get the invalid one. If you are only testing the valid test cases and you are not testing the invalid test cases, you have not done testing. So that's why when I ask you that an application that set 1 to 10, right? If you only put 2, 3, or 4 or 5, you have not done well, right? You also need to put 0, right? Or you need to put 11 as well and see what it should do, because you want to establish that, yeah, it doesn't fall out. It doesn't kind of accept it as well, right? So that's what you need to do. Or maybe you also put some okay, you also need to put other alphanumerics as well in that instances as well. So that's, unfortunately, I think our time is up. So we're going to start finish this later anyway. So, and I'll ask for a question tomorrow. Thank you. All right, cool. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna share my screen again. Okay, so I think we are on the test techniques actually. So we're going to talk about the test techniques quickly, right? So the first one in the next few minutes, we are going to talk about the equivalent partitioning actually. So like I said, you can actually partition some tests, your tests into different levels, right? Basically invalid or valid. That's how it starts actually. So if you are testing the valid one only, you are not testing the invalid one. You've not actually started. So, and also it also means that in some cases you might all want to divide your test as well. Let's say you have gender, male or female, or you might also have maybe children or adult or something like that, depending on what you are testing. So it's very, very good to kind of have knowledge of these particular techniques that once you are actually testing, you talk about what partition am I testing? Do you have different partition that I can break my test into? This is very, very important. Then you can now take test case from those partitions. Let's say you have invalid. So, okay, what are my invalid test case? I need one element, okay? Or one is valid. Or what is my invalid one? 11. So that is you having two test cases. You use them, right? So that is how this method is used anyway. So a good example is this one. You have an application that is set to number from 1 to 99, right? So now you have your invalid test case as 0. You have your valid as anything from 1 to 99, and then you have your invalid as 100. So when you are testing this application, you supply 0, you supplied 1, you supply 99, you supply 100, right? Or you could decide to go with anyone between 1 and 99 for this particular one, right? As you can see now, you've kind of divided your test cases into valid and invalid partition. Then you have boundary value analysis, which is also called PVA. So this is used when you have numbers and these numbers are boundaries, right? So, and it's very, very important when you have numbers, most of them will also be at boundaries, right? So when, for instance, in the case that we did before, right? So when you have this application that are set to 1 to 99, right? You have 0 and you have 1 at the boundary, you have 99 at the boundary, and you have 100. So now, as you can see, the first boundary is 0, second boundary is 1. So if I supply 0, the system should not accept it. If I supply 1, the system should accept it. And also because 98 it's not at the boundary anyway. I don't even care about that. So I just put that as an example anyway. But if you use 98, the system should accept it. But 99 is at the boundary, the system should accept it. Then 100 is at the boundary, but is at outside boundary, then the system should not accept it. So those are the things that you supply. 0, 1, 90, you don't need to worry about 98 because 98 would actually perform the same role as 1 and 99. So you don't waste your time. So you just say 0, 1, 99, and 100. That's what you need to do. And this here is basically talking about 2-point boundary, actually. There are other parts also when they talk about 3-point boundary, right? With 3-point boundary, you will say, oh, this is 0, 1, and 2, right? That is 2 point because, and you now have 99, 100, 98, 100, and 100. So that's a 3-point boundary. So you take the one at the boundary, and you take one outside the boundary. So you take one outside the boundary, one inside the on the boundary as well, inside the value, and you take one outside. So you have 0, 1, 2, 99, 90, 98, 99, and 100. So that's another, it's called, this one is called 3-point boundary value analysis. So now, so equivalent and partition, you can combine them together, right? A good example is like, if you have a password that accepts 0 to 5, right, character. Some of us, we've seen that before. So if you only supply anything 0 from 5, then you've not done well, right? You also need to ensure that, yeah, you supply, hold on, okay, no, sorry. So this is a criteria. The criteria said this password should supply minimum of 6 and maximum of 10. So once you are doing a test like this, you also ensure that you supply any character that has got from 0 to 5 as well. And you should ensure that the system does not accept it. Then you supply another character, another password with characters between 0, 6, and 10, and the system should accept. And then you also supply another password with characters between 11 and going on like that, and the system should not accept. With that, you've covered everything. As a tester, you must make sure that you cover most of these criteria. So I will leave this one now. Next time, we're going to talk about the roles, different roles that are in software testing. So I'll leave you to ask any question for now. So any question? Any question?
Hi, DG.
I
Yeah, I don't know about others, but I feel, yeah, it's a bit too fast, you know, so it's a bit of a struggle keeping up with the pace at which you're going.
Okay, I do appreciate that. So it's recorded, so you can actually watch it anyway. But one thing I said, this is just kind of a refresher course as well. So this program is practical, right? You will have opportunity, right, to be able to use what I told you, right? So that is most important. So, and yeah, I do know that it might be a lot anyway. So that's why I'm giving a bit of time now. So yeah, of course I know. Okay. Any question?